Hi everyone, today I'll be covering the Powkiddy X70. Back in the beginning of June I covered Powkiddy's X51 and mentioned that it would have looked so much better with an all-black design, and I think the all-black design of the X70 confirms this. Unfortunately, the Powkiddy X70 does have its share of issues, of course, but I'll try and cover these as we go. Spec-wise, the Powkiddy X70 CPU is a ATM 7051 quad-core ARM Cortex-A9 clocked at 9 MHz. It's got 128 megabytes of RAM inside, Powkiddy's own little OS that they featured in their budget handhelds this year, stereo speakers, a 3500 mAh battery, and a 7-inch display at a 1024 by 600 resolution. We'll play up to and including the PlayStation 1 library to various effect, with some bizarre emulation quirks like what seems to be frame skip enabled on the Super Nintendo emulator, the scaling option not working on arcade games, and so on. Straight out of the box, the Powkiddy X70 is a bit of a mixed bag. The shell design is actually really nice with the original Switch influence and form factor. The ergonomics aren't bad considering the handheld is pretty thin, and the buttons aren't bad at all either, with a nice spring to each press. The joysticks don't press in, but otherwise functional. There's limited movement, but it works well with the controls of the various emulators on board. Unfortunately, there's a couple of downsides with the control though. Firstly, we've only got 2 shoulder buttons, which is certainly a miss in PS1 games, and of the 2 we have, they aren't that great either, with them feeling loose and unresponsive. The D-pad isn't the best as well, with it being about half the size bigger than normal, which would be fine by itself, but it doesn't have a strong enough membrane behind it, allowing you to push it in almost all the way into the shell's case. This combines to some limited travel arcs when using the D-pad. Fortunately though, the Powkiddy X70 has a micro HDMI slot that works plug and play without having to restart the handheld or play around with any other settings. This allowed me to catch some footage of the firmware that's included with the X70 and go through some of the settings available to you. Other than changing the language, which mine was thankfully defaulted to English, you can change the background, the brightness, set when the backlight will dim, sync media playlist, which will rescan the SD card inserted and update all the game lists accordingly, reset all the settings, find some info, and set the VCOM. You can see the games as a full list, or by emulator, or search, which is still case sensitive unfortunately, so you'll need to add capitals in your searches where appropriate. Once you're into a game, you have the ability to use save states, as well as a settings option in the menu that allows you to control the sound output, remap the controls, set the screen size for the console emulators to either stretch to use the full screen or use their default ratios with letterboxing, as well as change the joystick to be digital or analog input. Overall, the firmware is not actually too bad for a budget handheld. It's far from feature-packed and certainly has quirks and shortcomings, but covering a lot of these budget handhelds has shown me a lot worse firmware elsewhere. Okay, so I'll cut some gameplay now and summarise back up at the end. So the Powkiddy X70 is overall another average budget handheld. I do think that budget handhelds are getting better with each one I review. It's just not iterating at a quick enough pace. If we mashed all of the last few budget handhelds I've reviewed together and took the best parts from each, we'd actually have a really decent low-cost handheld. Unfortunately though, that handheld doesn't yet exist. As it is, the Powkiddy X70 isn't a bad buy as a give the kids something to play type of purchase, or to get a non-gamer or techie into their first steps into retro gaming. But otherwise you'll likely be best off going elsewhere, unfortunately. That's it for now though. Thanks so much for watching.